Okay, we're going to jump right in here. Jamie, you're going to be sharing a report from a recent intensive. I'm really looking forward to getting some of you guys reporting back on intensives that you're running, how they're going, what you're learning. And so I just want to talk through that experience from a couple different angles. I want to talk about your niche, your specialty, some of how you structured things. And then if you guys have questions, we'll jump into some questions for Jamie towards the end there. Jamie, first of all, will you introduce yourself, where you're from, and a little bit about your practice right now?
Sure. I'm Jamie McCullough. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the Tampa Bay area, and I specialize in trauma, anxiety, and toxic relationships. As I've developed my practice, my niche tends to lean into women who have CPTSD, who happen to be high functioning and high achieving and look like they have it all together externally, but internally are unraveling and major parts of their life are not working and they just don't enjoy life really because they're burning it from both ends, sometimes for decades.
Yeah. Um, Jamie, you've got some real kind of like specific modalities that you use and are trained in. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, I'm certified hypnotherapist and also trained in accelerated resolution therapy. So do a lot of work with the subconscious and being able to identify the root of a lot of their belief systems and work from there, which usually stem back from an earlier age than they usually recognize until we go deeper.
Yeah.
Their sense of
Um,
self is usually solidified quite young.
yes. You also ART.
Yes, love
Yep.
ART. Yeah,
Okay, Jamie, when you joined the program, I'm trying to remember, this is maybe the end of September, mid-September.
September, October in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had done an intensive maybe a couple of intensives before you joined the program, yeah?
Yeah, I had done three or four, and I had been in a group practice where the supervisor, she had done like one or two a year. And usually they were for like major traumatic event cases, not really like a CPTSD type thing, like a rape and murder type scenarios. And I had taught for years, and I used to do writing intensives where we take the students for 2 or 3 days, teach them the fundamentals, and they were good to go after that. So, as a real believer in the submersion approach, ongoing, I began working with a woman who was transitioning. She was in a human trafficking house, transitioning into, somewhat normal life. And we had gotten, we had made a lot of progress, but she was having a lot of night terrors and flooding during the night. And I suggested we do a 2 day intensive. After that 2 day intensive, she had such phenomenal results. The things she would say are like, I never knew life could be like this. After that, she asked for another intensive. And at the end of the 2 day, we went out to eat afterwards. And we were sitting at a very public place on a Friday night on the street, a picnic table, lots of people. And she just started laughing. And she's like, I had no idea I could sit in public and not strategically figure out how to take everyone out in the path to get away from an
Yeah.
assault. And since then, and she's continued to have great progress. So, a huge believer. I think one of the mindsets for me that helps the most is I thoroughly believe it's the most effective form of treatment. And so it's easier for me to present because I
Yeah.
know the possibilities for them on the other side of it.
This is one of the things that this is why I really encourage you guys to take action as early as possible to get a repetition in this, because once you do it even one time, you're going to recognize the difference in results, benefits, breakthrough. You're going to see it like the very first time. And then once you have that much more confidence about the model, it just helps you move forward going like, okay, I know how powerful this is and I know I can do it. Those two things. So Jamie came into the program with a little more momentum than most people, having done one and going, oh, I know the power of the breakthrough. And so we're going to talk about this. That actually, I think, has helped Jamie price appropriately, like from the very beginning. And that's a thing that people can struggle with, but also just to really lean into getting repetitions as quickly as possible. The one thing I'd like for you to note about that intensive you did with the trafficking victim is because this is a thing I get questions about. You rented an Airbnb, you guys stayed there and just did that on site, right?
Yes. She actually rented it. I
Okay.
had a couple options and she took that initiative. I think if I were doing it typically, especially if it was somebody that I didn't already work with, I would probably set that up. But she actually took care of it that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone just asked me about that this week, I think, if that was an option. And so I was remembering that you did that.
Yeah,
Okay.
for me, Dane, the contrast though, because I've done them where the one where I stayed with her and I didn't end up getting up in the middle of the night to clear any night terrors or anything like that. I
Mhm.
was so much more exhausted because I don't think I totally relaxed knowing she was in the next room. So when I've done other 2 and even 3 day intensives, it was not as depleting for me. And
Yeah.
so I came out of that. I felt like I probably need 2 or 3 days of just reset. Whereas
Yeah.
that has not been my experience when I'm able to go home and be in a quiet space and
Mm.
reset in between the days.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good note there. Okay, so Jamie, tell us about the intensive that you're going to report on today.
So I think I'd done 3 or 4. When I first started, I didn't have Dane coaching me, so I kind of started slow in the sense that I had done a couple half day with people there. I just saw their stuck points. I'm like, we need more time, and I was seeing so much evidence from the 2 half days I'd done, and then we went into the 2 day with the client transitioning out of human trafficking. And then from there, I began to offer 1 and 2 day intensives to my existing clients that were stuck. Like we were kind of in the same place after several sessions. And I always present to them that I want to alleviate as much suffering as quickly as possible. That is really the key focus. It's the compelling reason why for me, and I think it's the compelling reason why for them. And when I begin sessions with clients, we always start with their goals. What do you want to have see, feel, and be different by the time we're finished working together? So I'm always using that as my roadmap. And so I have that there. And when I can look and say, we haven't had a lot of movement in this category, and I'm seeing how it's impacting your daily life, I really think an intensive would work to help do the deeper work because we start and stop 1 hour every week or biweekly so they can see the value in it, but it's also very specific to whatever their stuck point is. And the goals are just a really good reference tool for me to be evaluating their progress.
Can you just frame up this particular client and what was going on in outpatient that cued you that they were a good fit for this?
The first one, after coming into Dane's program, it helped me gain the confidence to do the 3 day. And one of the things I noticed next to Dane's model compared to what was doing was my intensives were intense. They were too intense. It was like having them drink out of a fire hydrant, whereas the spacing of 3 days was much more gentle to their nervous system, gave them much more integration time. So that model was not only easier for me to facilitate, but I think better for the client also. And so that helped me kind of reframe my intensive. I received a phone call from a woman who was friends with one of my clients, and I have a trifold that tells about the intensives, and I keep that in my office, and so I share it with clients to let them know that that's what I'm doing. And this, she happened to be a friend of one of my clients. She was in bed with depression, filing bankruptcy, 2 middle school, young teenage children, not functioning well, high anxiety, and really a dysfunctional relationship with money. She would overspend and, had a lot of legal matters happening as a result of that. So when she came in, her goals were to feel motivated enough to get out of bed and apply for a job and be consistent enough to show up at work due to her
Right.
depression. So
You
she,
guys hear how clear those goals are? Right? Real
yeah,
clear, very manageable, right? I say this a lot, but intensives aren't for everything, they're for something. And so those were very clear sort of like results that you guys were moving towards. Sorry to interrupt, Amy.
yeah, and actually, Dana, I appreciate you saying that because my inclination was trying to fit more than I could into an intensive. And so being very focused with that was very helpful. I had had the preliminary consult with her. I think we'd spent between our initial consult and then the pre-intensive maybe 90 minutes together. So I didn't know her that well. And, she filled out the paperwork, but on the beginning of the first day, she showed up instead of 9 a.m. at 12 p.m. Um, when she arrived, she's extremely neurodivergent. So getting her to track or even answer a direct question took 4 times longer than otherwise. Like my whole plan that I thought was so well organized, just poof, right then. Fortunately, I think I noticed I over plan because some things take a lot more time. And so it was just a matter of editing out and prioritizing rather quickly. But it was a lot of renegotiating. And Dane had even mentioned an intensive where someone didn't show up till noon. And I thought, okay, noted, but didn't think that that was going to be, my first 3-dayer. So there was a lot to navigate. We did, get through the highlights. I asked her to please, go home, regulate, reset, quiet. She'd be up on FaceTime with her girlfriends drinking wine till 2 a.m. So she kind of did everything wrong as far as like my protocol outside of the intensive. And yet she left at the end of day 3. I checked on her 48 hours later and she was in bed with the flu. So my heart just sunk because I thought, here we are working so hard to get you out of bed and functioning and motivated, and then you get slammed with the flu.
Mm-hmm.
When she came in 2 weeks later, she had interviewed 6 to 7 times. She had a new job that was very well suited. And we did a lot of personality profiling, trying to find the right fit for her professionally and career moving on, and was functioning well, moving forward, sorted all of her paperwork for bankruptcy, had some massive movement in spite of not following my protocol and really only showing up for 2.5 days. So that even helped my confidence in what
Yeah.
was happening and all. And my whole mantra for therapy is release from outcome. So she was testing me to come, really be releasing from outcomes. So one thing that was interesting, it was in the middle to the near end of day 2, and she's like, "Oh, can we work on my codependency?" Now, the codependency was linked to her spending habits. It was with her children and family, she would overspend. So it was all intertwined. But I said, you know what? That's probably another 2-day intensive. Let's set that aside and let's stay with this. This is priority one. So,
Good.
that was kind of a seed for the future, but I also had to really stay in that lane
Mm-hmm.
because it could have been easy to kind of detract into the codependency piece, but I really wanted to stay in line with our goals.
Good. Yeah. A couple things I really like there. One, when, and everyone needs to use your clinical wisdom on this, but when you get in the middle of it and a client's like, oh, but what about this goal? It's tempting to want to like chase that rabbit because essentially it's their time and we want to work on the things they want to work on. But using your sort of clinical judgment to go, okay, but this isn't really driving the reasons that you came here and the goals that we established. And you essentially have to sort of like in the moment really ascertain whether this is actually a core issue and whether it will help them get momentum, in moving forward, or if it's not tangential, but if it's almost like a separate category. If it's a separate category, that's a great place to essentially plant the seed like Jamie did there to go, this is probably something we can handle in a follow-up intensive. Okay. And so you're sort of planting that seed that there's more work to do, and intensive will maybe be a good vehicle for you to do that work. So way to stay on track, especially when we're working with clients that are going to be neurodivergent and with fractured attention, to be able to help them stay focused on why they're there. That's a big deal. Okay, Jamie, can you talk about two things more structurally? Number one, where you did this at your office. Can you kind of just like describe your office and your setup? We've got people here that are wanting to do intensives in their office, virtual. So just describe your setup.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I have two different rental spaces, but one is it's called Safety Harbor. So it's a little downtown area next to the water, but it's a meditation and yoga studio with office space. So what's nice about it is, though they might have classes a couple times a day, I can be in the office space, but then utilize the meditation yoga room for, it's just very well lit. It's very spacious. It's a good place for them to sit and do a meditation or journaling or what have you. So it's a nice way to move around. And then additionally, because it's on a very quaint street, people can walk and get lunch. They don't need to drive in their car between sessions. And there's actually a spa that if anyone wanted to stay the night, they could walk several blocks and stay at the spa. So it has everything there if they're staying for 3 days and they really wouldn't have to drive anywhere. It's been great. Other towns, I would probably, if that became unavailable, I'd probably look into other meditation or yoga type places where we would have that option.
Yeah, there's the thing that we talk about so often in here is being able to flex back and forth in between different modalities that engage different parts of people's selves. That's how we keep people in the window of tolerance. And I think there are quite a few people on here that have some kind of like yoga, mindfulness, meditation as part of their competence. And so that made a lot of sense for you, Jamie, as a part of your intensive offering as well. So, can you talk more about the sort of like day-to-day structure? You had to flex a lot, but can you talk about like what was the structure that you had, and then what did you end up doing kind of with the sessions throughout the days?
Sure. I'm, working with as much, working with the brain and neuroplasticity as much as possible. My first session on day one is data gathering. I'm usually taking a lot of measurements. I'm asking them to rate different emotions on a scale from 1 to 10, anxiety, worthlessness, shame, that type of thing. I do those measurements at the beginning of each day and then at the end. And that has been a really good tool because when I put the numbers in, I can give it to them in their post-intensive report so that they
Mm-hmm.
have tangible evidence for the work that they have done. So that's the first session of day one. And then I go heavy right from the beginning. I try to get some of the heavier things done first. So we'll do a 90-minute ART session, usually around the core wound. The three areas I focus on are core wounds, limiting beliefs, and resetting the nervous system. So the big thing, like for my neurodivergent client, it was motivation. And so that was our piece for the 90 minutes. After that, there's a 30-minute integration time where they can go get water, go for a walk. I have customized. I find topical guided meditations with the topic that we're working on. So let's say it's motivations linked with a sense of I'm not enough. I might give them a 10 or 15-minute meditation and journaling session for something like that. And then again, after lunch, it's kind of a similar, it's usually not a 90-minute, but a 60-minute ART session. Usually that stems off of a side piece that came up in our first session that becomes very apparent
Mm.
and it's linked to a limiting belief, again, by an integration session. Um, Day two is very similar. It's more geared toward the limiting beliefs, but it's usually their secondary goals. So I usually have them 2 to 3 goals for the intensive. And then and then on the third day, we do a where I have them identify their ideal self. What does our ideal self look like? How do they show up in their day? And we walk through the day, how she feels, how she engages. And that's like my hypnotherapy interview. And so we do eye movements with that, where we're like wiring and firing their sense of their ideal self into their nervous system. But then that is also recorded with theta waves. And I send them the audio usually the next day after the intensive for them to listen to every morning and evening for 30 days. I did put in time. I wanted to do a vision board with that client in particular. That was one of the things that didn't happen because of the editing, but I did have other things for us to do that felt lighter, but still reinforcing the work we had done.
Yeah.
But we weren't actually able to use them.
That day three, at some point you kind of have to start landing the plane a bit. And so we want to land with as much sort of like hope and future orientation as possible. And so I love that day three. The vision board would have been a perfect way to do that as well. But this ideal self, reinforcing that through the hypnosis work as well. That's a
Yeah,
really
and
good
I
way
would
to
say it's almost like solution focused therapy on day three, where we're really
good.
future focused. Like
Yep.
we're kind of like we closed out all the trauma stuff, and now we're really focused on what their new sense of self looks like moving
Yep.
forward, and we just marinate in that on day three.
Beautiful. If you guys compress that, if you think about compressing that, if that's sort of where you would want to land on day three, if you're doing a 1 day intensive, you want to think about that final movement of the day being this kind of thing. It's forward thinking, it's solution focused, it is engaging as much sort of hope and momentum as possible, right? And so, with a longer runway of a 3 day intensive, you can spend kind of the back half of day three doing that. It's a really great way to close the time together. But in a 1 day, you've still got to do that same thing. So just think about like compressing that time. Okay, one
And
of the
can I
things.
also say, like along the way, when I find things that resonate with them, whether it be visualizations or a good memory or a redirect in the ART, I begin to compile that as a list of tools for them
Mm,
for afterwards because I want them to continue to reinforce the work we've done in those 3 days. And so if they find themselves slipping into like a hopeless mindset or whatever, I'm like, I want you to go back to that place and spend a few minutes in that place thinking the positive thoughts and the feelings that you had. And then I want you to visualize yourself going through your day. So I'm trying to give them reinforcement tools and like rhythms. I liken mental health to nutrition. I'm like, we don't address it, but you
mm,
eat 3 times a day. You're very intentional about fueling your body. Just take 5 minutes a couple times a day and reinforce the work we've done so that it becomes automated. You don't think about brushing your teeth. We want to get some of these ways of thinking as automatic as you brush your teeth. And it can happen, but it has to start with the intention first. And that's kind of part of the trajectory of the momentum in the intensive. And then giving them those tools. So that 2 week check-in, I'm going to ask you about, and I don't give them tons of homework or anything like that. It's just that one thing that can really
hmm.
help them.
That's good, Jamie. So you're kind of keeping track of what is it that connected with this client in the moment? Where did I see some breakthrough? They were able to get regulated. And then you're sort of like collecting those tools for them, and kind of like re-delivering them to them. Like, hey, let's remember, these things that worked for you.
Yeah.
These need to be integrated into daily life. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, there was one intensive where she had a narcissistic family system and really bad CPTSD, and her sense of self was really, really challenged. And during one of the ART redirects, she had hiked in Zion National Park, and I guess there's a big tunnel, and when you go through the tunnel, it opens into this expansive view. And she's a Christian, And Zion is very symbolic for her spiritually and connects with her relationship with God. But then she had that experience. And so that was part of the redirect. And that was like one of the pieces when
Hmm.
I'm like, if self-loathing begins to visit you, I want you to go back to Zion. And
Hmm.
because we'd spent so much time visualizing Zion, feeling the feelings in Zion, that really resonated with her. But that little nugget was like her return to,
Yeah.
go back to Zion. And then I'd have her visualize going into difficult times of her day and then choosing to go back to Zion. So every now and then, they give you a nugget and it's kind of like, that's where rein that in and go with it.
Yeah. And it's up to us to actually like identify those nuggets and then retain them, right?
Yeah.
And so making sure as our clients are rolling through a day and we're like, oop, that feels like a real like breakthrough point or like a portal for them to kind of get back into the work. Let me make sure that I get that. And then day three is a great time to reestablish, okay, remember this moment, remember this visualization we did. These are the things that you need to carry forward. Um, okay, we talk often about how do we create a different experience with intensives than what people normally get in outpatient? And how is it obvious that this is a more valuable experience? Okay. One of the things that you mentioned there, Jamie, is that you do a recording of the hypnotherapy and then deliver that to them afterwards. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really valuable thing. That's a valuable addition here. One of the things we also talked about originally, Jamie, I don't remember if you're doing this. Are you sending them something before as well?
Yeah, so I have a workbook. And so I have two different ones, one for a 2-day, one for a 3-day. And then I have a welcome packet and I will do a printed version with their name in the welcome packet. My workbooks stay the same. So I did a bulk printing of 10 of each of those. So that's easily done. And then I put in, I have a book. So I include the book and then a candle, some fuzzy socks, a journal, a pen, and a little note, and I mail that to them 2 weeks before the intensive as a little care package. And then I usually have a little something for them when they come in to the intensive.
Hmm.
So like for
Yeah, we.
instance, my client transitioning out of human trafficking, sunflowers and the color yellow, she couldn't identify feelings, but she could identify the color of feelings, and yellow was her sweet spot, and she liked sunflowers. So I got her a little gift box that had sunflower coffee mug and little things like that. So when you get to know your clients, sometimes you'll know little things about them that is very personalized.
Yeah, that's right. We talk sometimes about how do we host people well, and so these are the kinds of things that create a different experience in the way that we host people. And so, some of these like a physical welcome gift, like once they come into the space, is really helpful. And then putting together a welcome packet. That's part of what you guys will do, is sort of constructing what's my welcome packet, and whether that's digital, and that's okay for it to be digital, or whether it's physical, we want to make sure that before the intensive even happens, they're beginning to recognize this is a different and more valuable experience. We also want them to come in with as much momentum as possible. And so this is a big reason that the workbook, we deliver that, beforehand, because it's the potential, not the promise, but it's the potential that they can begin to do some work and get some momentum before they come into the intensive. So Jamie, um, how did this client interact with the workbook? Did she use it?
I
Yes.
didn't bring it, yeah. I had to give her a pen to borrow and give her a new journal.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
You'll find that will happen. It's okay. The workbook is still really valuable and still worth doing. Okay, Jamie, you had to do a lot of flexing in this. You had to change your daily schedule. I'm curious, like, how did that feel to you? Um, how were you able to kind of figure out, okay, we can't do this, but we do need to make sure we get to these sessions?
I had to manage a little bit of stress because I felt a little stressed when she came in 3 hours late. And the other piece that really stressed me, she didn't have money for lunch. like no money. And so that was concerning also. I did have a little snack pack for her as part of the gift in the morning. So I was grateful for that. I might have like a lunch gift card in the future just as a backup for that scenario because that was really uncomfortable for me. And I really wanted her to be feeling good
Yeah.
coming into that. So that was that piece. Some of the things editing were pretty easy. The vision board was going to be like a part of the afternoon because you had to, it was going to be two steps to it. And I'm like, that's, an hour, hour and a half we can just drop. There were a lot of things I edited out that I thought could have strengthened some of the change for her, but weren't as important.
We talked, I don't know if we talked the morning of when she was late. I think we did. I think we checked in at some
I
point.
think I talked to you like that evening, or because I was
Yeah.
like, yeah.
And so, yeah, that one was, it was complicated, and you did a really good job of just sort of like flexing. It would be easy to be like sort of frustrated and offended and to lead with that when someone shows up late or they're not as sort of invested as you want them to be. And yet, if we think really like strategically, what's best is that we focus on attunement, getting them comfortable and safe. That's the thing that's going to open them up to do their best work. And so you did a really good job of like focusing on strategically what was most important with this client. So attunement and safety. Talk about this thing of, because it might seem weird if you guys are thinking, how did she not have lunch for money, but she had lunch for an intensive? So let's just kind of talk about like that dynamic. Who paid for this and how much did you charge?
Yeah, so it was her mother who's very concerned about her well-being and everything that's going on in her life. So I actually had a consult with the client and then had a consult with her mom, where her mom just asked a lot of questions, and it was more me informing her of what an intensive was and everything. So that was that piece. Was there another part of that question, Dane?
Yeah, what was your pricing for this?
Oh, yeah. So my originally when I did my beta for my human trafficking girl, she's on a sliding scale. My beta was $1,000 for the first intensive. And then after that, it was $1,500. Now I charge $2,000 a day for the intensives. I want to say I did three or four at the beta price of 1,700, and now it's 2,000 a day.
Yeah. What uh what has it been like to communicate that price to potential clients?
I've grown in my comfort of it because I've seen the results. And I know how much preliminary work I put into it, and staying attuned with someone all day long, while it's a gift to me, I enjoy it as well. It's costly in its own way. And so I
Yeah.
think the mindset of knowing what it can do and how much it can be transformative in such a short amount of time makes me okay with the price. I was able to sign up for care credit in like 48 hours. So that's an option for them. I also take HSA and FSA cards. So there's some payment options for them. I haven't actually offered a payment plan. At this point, it's been 50% down and then 50% at the time of the intensive. And also, I think it became increasingly more aligned with me as I continued to see the evidence coming in of what the intensives actually did.
Yeah. Yeah. Good, Jamie. Two other questions here. Number one, what did you learn about, or what have you learned about managing your energy during an intensive week or an intensive day?
Yeah. So the first intensive I did with the overnight, I had plans. On the second day, I left the beach condo to meet, and that I paid for. I was just exhausted for several days afterwards. So now on intensive evening, I don't have plans the evening before or the evenings of any intensives. And the following day, I try to have like as little like laundry and house chores. And I try to schedule a massage if possible. So I try to really keep it light. After that first intensive, I noticed I was carrying a lot of tension through my body. Of course, it was my first one, and spending the night overnight, it was just a new experience, but that would not be sustainable for me long term. The 3 day with the neurodivergent that was felt a little chaotic at time was actually much easier on me physically and emotionally because I had the integration blocks where I wasn't engaging. I would go into the other room and have my own like reset as well. I didn't engage at lunch. I needed that reset. And then just quiet evenings in between made a huge difference for me. I didn't feel like I needed the same recoup time as I did the overnight one.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. You've had, a number of intensives booked here. You've got a couple more, I think, that are booked right now. Can you just talk about where are those clients coming from? What is working in terms of marketing?
Yeah, so I run Google Ads and I also have a Facebook, Instagram ad. I've had several people fill out pre-admission and forms, but probably only 20% actually schedule a consult. So the majority are really coming from my existing clients. I actually, based on Dane's recommendation, when I'm signing a new hourly client, I share with them about the intensives and then, I'm shifting over to an intensive model because of its effectiveness. And so it begins the conversation right from the first consult. So today I had a first session with a woman, CPTSD, and because I had touched on it in the original consult, it was more of a conversation today as I learned more about her. And so yeah, I just keep the dialogue going, especially when they identify that this area could really be accelerated, the healing process, especially when it's affecting their daily life. When there
Yeah.
are things coming up for them where their relationships are suffering, their health is suffering, their finances are suffering, that helps put some motivation or, when they can tangibly see this thing could change, I
Yeah.
think that makes a big difference. But right now, predominantly, it's existing clients.
Yep. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Jamie's experimenting with ads right now and some lead generation stuff. And so there's some of it that's working. She's getting inquiries, and so that's going to convert at some point. It's a little bit of a process to get ads to do the work for you. But for those of you with private practices, it's a very consistent way to fill those intensives. Right now, if you just think about your practice, people that need an intensive, that they have enough impact in their life that they need a longer runway of care. So beginning what I talk about as to kick off that word of mouth machine starts with every client that you see needs to know that you do intensives. And so keep those inquiries open. And as they come in, they need that on the first phone call. I'd love for everyone here to be able to ask Jamie questions about anything she said or anything else that you're curious about. So um, who wants to start?
Can I add one more thing, Dane?
Yeah,
Interestingly, I have two
please.
clients who have done two intensives. So they are seeing the results. And then, 3 or 4 months later, around a different piece, they're like, can we do another? They don't tend to be 3 days with existing clients. It's 1 or 2 days. Most of them are 2 days. But that also for me is evidence as well when they're like, that really helped in this area of my life. Let's do it again in this area. So that's been some of
100%.
the repeat as well.
That's my experience as well, is that once people get a taste for doing that kind of work, they're like, oh, that's way more valuable and actually economic in terms of time for me. Like, let me just go and do the work in that way, get breakthrough, get momentum. People like attach to that really quickly because it feels like there's so much momentum they get. Okay, guys, you can raise your digital hands or just unmute yourself and ask a question.
I would encourage you all if you feel like reluctant or, even just start with a half day intensive
Yeah.
or a 1 day with an existing client. I think that helped me build my confidence quite a bit and see the results.
That's really good advice, and I feel like that's a big part of what even some of you guys here on the call that we've worked together to just go, hey, let's hold the 3 day for a minute and let's just focus on a 1 day, because I think a 1 day feels a lot more sort of like you can wrap your brain around that, you can wrap your schedule around that. For some people, it's difficult to even think about where's the 3 day going to fit in my schedule. But if you get a few repetitions of 1 day, there's Amy from Night Therapy Services is on day 2 of an intensive right now. She did day 1 yesterday, and we had some conversation. And I think the concern is always like, how am I going to fill the time? Like, is it too much runway? When you get into it, more often than not, you're like, I needed more time. I frequently get to the end of 3 days and I'm like, we could do this for 5. And so if you'll just start with the piece that feels manageable, which is usually that 1 day, or even structuring a half day, you're going to pretty quickly go, I need more time. A 2 day is going to make a lot more sense. But don't get distracted by or overwhelmed by a 3 day in the beginning. Just focus on the thing that feels kind of graspable there. Okay, Irina, you've got your hand up.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for presenting this. I think for me it was extremely helpful. When you said at the beginning that you were too intensive, that resonated with me so much. I think I would have done that. I'm like,
Mhm.
I want to do so much and I have so much to offer that I don't know when to stop, and I get myself in trouble with my hourly sessions because it's like so much to be done in so little time, and I want them to get that and the other, and then it's like I comprise too much. They leave with a lot, but sometimes I feel like they're confused of like, whoa, this was a lot, type of thing. So I could see how I would have done the same in my intensives. So it was so educational to hear you say pacing down. And I think Dane having this model of it's so structured, it's so detail oriented, and determining the goals and keeping the goals. I think that was very instructional for me. Now, when it comes to lunch, is lunch included in so if I offer 7 hours, then I have to stay them with eight hours because they have to eat lunch, or how does that go?
So I
Good
schedule
question.
it from 10 to 4/5 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
and that includes a 12:30 lunch for 40 to 60 minutes. What's interesting is I had a male client I did a 2 day with, and he asked for us to be done at 3 both days because he was so exhausted. That's when, before my intensive was intense part, I didn't have as many integration break pieces because I was trying to give him as much as possible in our 2 days. And
Right,
so he
right.
was like, can we punch out? I just cannot, like, I cannot internalize anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I think looking at those breaks as time for them to integrate and let
Mm-hmm.
their nervous system and then processing it all, so it's not like it's dead time,
Right.
but integration time.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, and we can structure everything, even lunch, so it has some utility for us. Just because someone takes an hour break for something, it doesn't mean that we're getting out of the work. It does mean that we can shift that for them. So if we take a 30-minute integration and we want them to walk, we might give them like one, I'll use mantra statements. Here feels like a big takeaway from our morning. Why don't you just say this sentence to yourself about 10 times as you walk? And so we can keep them connected to the work without being kind of in the full fire hose of it. And lunch can be like that as well.
How about eating lunch together?
I
This is
felt
like,
like that was my experience with that first overnight intensive. We were eating meals together, and I felt like at the end, that's where I noticed more of a drain on my energy because I'm
Mhm.
still fully engaged. I'm still completely attuned to them, not me. So
Right.
when at lunch, I'm taking time to meditate, kind of pull my energy back into my frame, breathe through any tension in my body. I don't tend to do that with my clients sitting in front of me in the same way. So for me, for the long haul, I felt like it was better for me and my ability to stay present and focused and then reset for the next day also. Of course, totally up to, what you're most comfortable with, um, but I found that to be helpful for me to take that time.
So
Good.
let me ask you, have you had days somehow wired to do this, right? Like I'm work or rest, no in between. Run. I have 2 children. I do it all. But when I rest, I'm done. Don't let me sit down because then I'm done. I don't want to go back to it, right? So, but that's me. And my work days are 9 to 9. I see clients from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. back to back, no lunch break. I eat with my clients. There's nothing in between. I go to the restroom in between, which is right here, and that's that. And I have my snacks, my protein bars. I have some clients that are perfectly fine with me eating, and I can sustain that. That for me, that's how I do things. This is wired within me. I've learned that that's how I work with everything,
Yeah.
right? So that's why I'm asking you, do you feel that based on the way I do things, actually eating lunch with them is actually going to sustain me, but it might drain them. So I have to be mindful of.
I would ask them, would you like a lunch on your own or some company?
Right.
Yeah.
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 That
That's
sounds
a great
good.
frame. And you can continue doing, some work with lunch if you want to. But again, you got to remember, Irina, like we are trying to build sustainability here. I want you to be able to do this for the next 30 years.
I come energized and I come home equally energized because this is like giving so much back to me. It's like really I love what I do so much.
You get to bring your energy and ask that client, like, do you need a break? But as long as you are asking yourself the question first, like, do I need a break here? If you get a no to that and you're good to stay in it, then asking them is going to be a good guide for what's next. Awesome. Okay,
Right.
LaQuisha, we've got time for one more question and then we've got to wrap it up.
Thank you. Thank you guys. This was so helpful and inspiring. I just want to say that first. Jamie, I had a question about your space.
Yeah.
I heard you say that it was a yoga and meditation studio.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm curious, were you guys there by yourself or were there other things going on in the space as you were doing the intensive?
Yeah, there are 2 offices at the back. So we utilize that back office. And yes, that is something like there was a meditation and a yoga class during the day. Because it's a meditation studio, it tends to be very quiet, but I do try to time it. Like if there's a class, I try not to have my client coming in when people are transitioning in or out just for their own
Mm-hmm.
privacy. But yeah, we have had to navigate around that. Fortunately, it's a quiet atmosphere, so it doesn't affect us at all. I try to time my clients' entrance and exit around that if possible.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Good. Okay, Jamie, I want to respect your time here. Thank you so much. Anything else that you would kind of say to the group here?
If you have any resistance, look at that because I think once you get going and you see the benefits, it's a win-win. We get to help
Yeah.
people at a deeper level and work a little less and make a little more. And it just, for me, is such a good model. So just looking at any of that resistance and working through that and getting that first person in, even if it's just for a day, and you'll do amazing. You'll be amazed by what you see. So,
That's right.
yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate it. Guys, thank you so much for being here,
Thanks.
asking good questions. I hope this was useful for you. All right.
Bye,
See you
guys.
guys next time.